Okay, so V-Ray, no? As you guys know, if you don't have this little toolbar, make sure that you have it. How? We right click on any gray area of the interface, show toolbar, and normally it's in the bottom. Wait, here, new V-Ray. If it's not there, scroll up a little bit until you find it. If you don't see it, it's normally there, especially in the computers in the lab. Okay. So at this point, I don't have Grasshopper open. I don't have anything, and I don't even have some of the layers on, so I can move around easier. As you can see, much better to move. And only, for example, for the renderings at the end, I will turn on the layers. Okay. Okay, V-Ray. We have that toolbar. We're gonna check two things as intro. M stands for material. O stands for options. So in options, this window will pop out. We're gonna change for sure the environment. And for the environment, we're gonna need, if you go to your Blackboard page, we go to content, important stuff, the HDRI file, this one. And obviously, we need some materials from important stuff. So download the ones you want to use. And remember, take some of the images and always take the one that ends with B and N, as in blanco y negro, because it's a map that we're going to use to create textures in V-Ray, okay? The HDRI is an image that is special and particular for domes and skylights domes. It means that there's going to be a little bit of a dome, always bigger than the models that we have in Rhino. And that's going to illuminate, that's going to, our model is going to reflect that, okay? So we'll see how that looks right in a second. If we go to Rhino again, we're going to do that in environment, okay? Another thing you should go and do is output. Output, by default, is 800, 600. It's not good. We take a minimum to this option, so we make sure that we can use the images at least for the entire spread if we want to. Now, I do recommend that if you're going to use the entire spread for a book of letter size paper, that you go even beyond that, like 3,000, okay, or 4,000. If you're going to use a poster, you should even go beyond that, okay? Output is important. I'm going to keep it low because I'm recording at the same time as I explain, so in order to make things a little faster, okay? Output done. Indirect illumination, you should have this checked on, okay? Which is by default, I think, so it should be fine. Now, environment and output, those are the most important. For now, I'm going to close this and we'll place the environment right after, okay? I'm going to close that. M. This window pops up. Here's where we add materials and we select objects in Rhino and say assign this material here to this object in Rhino, no? The way to create materials is always right-clicking on scene materials. Create material, standard. Now, I won't get into the other type of materials, so if you say standard, it gives you a default material. Default material has gray color, it's opaque, etc., etc. And it's called default material. So we double click there to change it. Let's say this top path, for example, and say OK. We can assign materials to objects in Rhino in two different ways. One, right click on the material, assign material to selection, and it says no objects are selected. So first you select, if I cannot select that, it's probably because I locked it, no? Yeah, there you go. I unlock it, select, right click, apply materials to selections. Good. Another way of assigning materials, right click, apply material to layers, and that's going to be particularly interesting if you want to assign materials to an entire layer, such as color, no? Which there are 1,000 different options. You say okay, and that's good. In this case, we want to assign it to the path, no? Here it is. Okay. Another way actually is right clicking here, saying select objects, and then right click, apply material to selection. Okay, good. You can right click and duplicate materials as well. Now if you think it's going to be very similar to one of the materials, it's better to change the material entirely, you're happy with it, and then you duplicate. So for each material you have a color and transparency. For now we're going to take those two things. And bump, I think it's, now that's the one that's going to deal with texture. So you can change here the color of your material by clicking on the color, or you can assign an image instead of a color by pressing the M. The M stands for map, and as you can see the M repeats everywhere, so it means somehow that we can put images almost in any different option for V-Ray. So we press the M, this window opens, and we have different things that we can place inside. Default images, like noise, we say preview, and it shows you that image. A checker, and you say preview. Or you can assign a material that you want, let's say bitmap. Automatically a window opens and you can select some of your materials. I'm going to select under desktop, I think I create a folder with the images that I downloaded from Blackboard, okay? For the path I'm going to use concrete, for example, or this one, barbed wall. Say open, and you can say preview to see it. Good. You can say OK. You say preview as well here, and it will tell you how it looks, the material. Now as you can see, we cannot see it in Rhino. The way to see it in Rhino is as simple as right clicking here and say I want to see it rendered, and there it is. Okay, now it looks quite not good. It's trying to do its best to adapt itself to this weird triangulation, okay? So we're gonna have to do, for most of the materials that are associated with an image, we're gonna have to do what is called mapping, okay? So at this point you can close this, select whatever you want to map, and map it. Now map something, you have to go to properties, and this is Rhino now, it's not actually V-Ray. And you can say, you see this option, texture mapping, and it gives you different mapping possibilities. I normally use apply box mapping for this. And normally I say bounding box, and OK, OK. You see how it mapped? You have many options to map this. This basically means, what if I want to repeat this more often in one direction? So you can start changing these numbers. X, Y, Z always. So you can repeat this 2 times and repeat in this direction. Okay. 1, you can repeat this 5 times and you see how it started repeating in the other direction. 6 times, 2 times, 8 times. You see how I'm changing how it looks? This is the Z value. It doesn't change much because they're flat. You can say 20 times, 5 times. That's a nice texture now. So in general the process, by the way, if you select, you deselect, you can select again, and you go to texture mapping, and it will remember the options. that you had. Okay, you can also change the XYZ rotation and change the Z to 45, and that will have rotated 45 degrees. So mapping, for a good rendering, it's a must. Now, mapping you only do when you have an image associated to a material. For example, for the glass pieces, we won't use mapping because it's a pure color material. Okay, well, I'll explain that in a second. So in that sense, we can go back to M again and start adding more ingredients. Now you see how the color is green, but there's an M and it's blue. This means that we have a map here. That disregards whatever is here, so the green is not going to work. No problem, the map is going to work. And if you're not sure, just preview and it's telling you what the material is going to look later on. Another thing, bump. You click on bump, press on M, text bitmap, the same one we used before, and select always the B and M. The same one you have, but BN as in blanco y negro, black and white. This, what it's going to do, preview, it's going to take whatever is black and push in, and whatever is white, push out. Now if you have grayscale, you have a little bit of pushing in and out. Okay? So you say okay, and let's see how the preview looks. You see how it has this little kind of a texture? So that's what the bump is doing, give you more like realistic touch. Now be careful, 1 is normally very big, so I normally put in 0.25, make a render, and then come back here and change the number depending on how intense the texture is. Okay? Okay, now everything is good. I'm gonna right click, duplicate material, right click, rename, or double click and rename and say landscape. This is my landscape material. You might have one already, so you can just click that one and change some of the features. I'm gonna assign that by right clicking, material to layer, assign, and go to landscape. Okay, there we go. Now you see, because I duplicated, is the same material, and you might want the same material. I think it's actually good that it's the same one, but you might want to change it as well. To change it, you go back to the M. You don't have to change that, you just click on this option to select a different image. Concrete. Preview. Yes, concrete. Now remember, we also placed the bump. It now has a bump that doesn't match with the image, so you have to go to M and also change the bump to the one that corresponds with the concrete. Open. Okay, preview, and there is. Now you can close this, and you see how some faces are bad, other ones are better, depending. We need to select and do the mapping as well for each material that has an image associated. Again, right click here, select objects, properties, texture mapping, bounding box. I like that one in particular. Enter, yes. So everything has kind of matched a little bit better, but you can make it smaller again by clicking here how many times you want it to repeat. 2, 2, 2. Now this will depend on also on the scale of your file, okay? So you can say 5, 5, and 5, what is just making 5 times the same material in different sides, okay? So now that looks perfect. And again, remember that we're under shaded mode. If it starts to be heavy, you can go back to shaded and go back to render every time to check if it's looking good or not. Okay, I'm going to do very fast another one. Duplicate. I'm going to call this crater. I'm going to select the crater materials. Right click, select, right click, apply material to selection. And I'm going to leave that material the same. Why not? And while it's selected, I can go also to properties and map it with the box one. Say bounding box, yes, yes. And start repeating this as many times as we want. 5. Or repeating numbers here like 100. And it changes that, as you can see. By changing these numbers, the number of times the image repeats, it's controlled by these numbers, okay? So I'm gonna save it here, and I'm gonna kind of cancel the video so I talk about the glasses in a second, okay?